Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. Nice can of Sprite Chill Toast. Okay, a viewer recommended or requested a video on this topic. I have addressed it before, and I don't have too much new to say, or too much to say about it, period. But, I think it's a good topic, so I'll try to get some thoughts out here. So the viewer was talking about the Rogan video. I talked about how like Rogan's got a real issue with taking himself too seriously. Apparently, the entire Austin comedy scene has the same problem. And so he asked me, like, it seems like you don't take yourself very seriously. Like, why is that? How is that? Well, thank you. I try not to take myself too seriously. And, you know, you know, I think, you know, well, I guess, you know, what they, like, if you really want to just, like, not take yourself seriously, right? If you, like, what, I mean, this is, it's maybe more of an issue in our current society, but people have been struggling with this forever. And, you know, the way that they've approached it in Eastern cultures, particularly in Buddhism, is to just kind of negate the self altogether, to try to be like, to try to destroy the ego. And, you know, in the West, we're not as big on that. And I think for a good reason. I really don't like, I don't know if it's as bad in Hinduism, the whole like anti-ego thing. But in Buddhism, it's definitely the goal, is to destroy the ego, which is not a good thing, in my opinion. You know, like the ego, you have an ego for a reason. The ego is a good thing. You just need to channel it properly. You know, it's like I don't know, it's like anything else. It's like your physical body, right? It's like you shouldn't be trying to like extinguish your physical body. You just need to just use it for good purposes and not to like kill people or do things that are going to make you miserable. And the same thing with the ego. You just need to use it, like you just need to use it properly, instead of just trying to get rid of it. You know, this like you know, it's so easy to like go into this like super extreme way, because you know that's often the most logically satisfying or the most logically simple, is to just, you know, be like, oh, okay, well, addiction to pleasure is bad, so I'm just going to avoid all pleasures, you know, altogether. And it's like there may be a place for that at times, but it's not a way, you know, you shouldn't. It's not for a lifetime. You don't just shut yourself off in a cave for the rest of your life, you know, subsisting on bugs. There may be, again, certain people who that is their best path for somebody, but generally speaking, you know, you don't want to do something like that permanently. You might want to do it for a short period of time, but not permanently. So I really disagree with the whole destroy the ego thing. However, they've got like kind of a point, is in the sense of like, you know, here in the West especially, I don't think it's as bad in Eastern cultures, maybe because of the whole, they don't make as big a deal at it, but the whole self-esteem and self-confidence thing. And, you know, I feel like everything I've ever done to improve my self-esteem and self-confidence has just made both of those things worse. And, you know, I don't think I'm alone. I don't think I'm alone in that, you know, respect, you know. So again, the Eastern idea would be like, will you just get rid of the sense of self and the issue, you know, solves itself. It's kind of like, you know, like you're dying of cancer, so you shoot yourself in the head, and then there's no, the cancer's not a problem anymore because you're dead. You know, it's just like, so it's like, to me, it's self-defeating, but I see what they're saying. So if you're not going to go down the Eastern path of just, you know, negating the self altogether, and who knows how much success you'll even have with that, then then what do you do? And, you know, I think people what people totally naturally pursue is some type of self-improvement, even if they don't call it that and don't think of it that way. Like, you're doing this XYZ to optimize your health, or, you know, your looks, or something like that. And but the problem with that is that, as far as I can tell, it doesn't work. I mean, it's never worked for me. So, you know, the black pill thing would be to say, like, well, you're not gonna make yourself taller, or make your frame bigger, or make yourself better looking, or certainly not younger. So you're not gonna fix these things. I would actually, I mean, I think there's a lot to that, but I would say it goes way further than that. Because, you know, I've been thinking, like, what if you made me 23 years old and, like, you know, looking like Heath Ledger, and like 6'7", and, you know, just like built like an NFL linebacker, and then gave me like an extra 40 IQ, well, maybe not 30 IQ points. But everything else was the same, right? Yeah, I just don't think that I'd feel any more confident. I mean, like, yes, I'd be more confident in interactions, because, you know, I'd have a deeper voice. People would naturally be more wary of me just because I was bigger. And then there's like the status, you know, halo of being a good-looking guy and stuff. And so, and then the way that people treated me would make me more confident in itself. But on the inside, I really feel like I'd basically be the same, you know? And that a lot of confidence is neurochemical. Like, I mean, after all, you've got plenty of like old, frail, sickly people who are really confident. In fact, a lot of them are more confident than anybody else. And then you've got like big, strong guys who, you know, radiate a lack of confidence. I mean, look at a guy like Matt Rife, who, like, the lack of confidence is just so obvious, you know, despite the fact that, you know, I know that he's kind of a Franken-Chad, like he had surgeries and stuff, but, you know, it's not, I don't know. There's a real obvious insecurity there, but I'm rambling. So the thing then, like, you know, but the thing is, like, if you, like, the people who, you know, are really, you know, confident, and like, yeah, I don't know. I was about to say it's because they don't take themselves that seriously, and I think there's a lot to that, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know what it's all about. But we're not really talking about that. We're talking about the whole, you know, just let's forget about the confidence and self-esteem for a while, and just think about taking yourself too seriously. But I think that the tendency that people have to take themselves too seriously comes from the focus on confidence and self-esteem. You know, like, so like the first thing is, let's say you have low confidence and self-esteem. You know, in the Western world, we try to do things to improve the confidence and self-esteem. But let's just say it worked. You know, I know it usually doesn't. But let's say it worked. Then it's inevitable, right, that it working is going to make you take yourself more seriously. So you end up in this kind of counterintuitive thing where, you know, it can often be the case that the less you try to improve yourself, the better you'll feel about yourself. Sort of like how, if you can think back to, like, when you were a really little kid, before there were insecurities and stuff. Like, I can definitely remember, you know, there would have been a time, like, when I was young, I just cared about what was in front of me, right? I'm talking about like 3, 4, 5 years old. You know, I didn't care what anybody thought about me, or, anything like that. It was just like, I'm just trying to have fun or do these things, explore the world. And, that was as far as it goes, because when you're that young, your sense of self hasn't, you still have an ego and a sense of self, but it's not as, it's more malleable, maybe. It's not as ossified and as fragile. It's the thing, and I guess maybe sometimes when people get older, it's kind of happens the same thing. But it's not also like, because I always thought, like, it's like, well, why, like, I used to take myself way too seriously, and now I don't. I figured a lot of it's just because I got older. And, but then I'm thinking about guys like Joe Rogan, and who it's obviously like, and yeah, maybe he's more obvious than most people, but there's a lot of people out there who, like it's for Joe Rogan, it's clearly getting worse. I mean, he obviously always took himself too seriously. We get that, but it's like, it's gotten to his head, and it's just gotten, worse and worse on that front. And like, the reason you shouldn't do it, the reason you shouldn't take yourself too seriously, is because it's not going to make you happy. And, Joe seemed happier to me 10 years ago, 8, 9 years, 5, 6 years ago. And then, he does now. So for me, a few things helped, for like, and what I've talked about before, the biggest thing for me was that, like, really bad depression I fell into a few years ago. Like, that was like, so, and I wouldn't recommend that. But that kind of, like, it got so bad that, like, it got to a point where there did seem to be, like, some kind of depersonalization, going on, so that even when things came back, it wasn't the same. Like, and I wasn't as, I didn't identify myself with me as well. That's kind of, it's hard to explain if you hadn't seen it yourself. Because when I was young, I would have said, this is all cope. That's just like, I can say it over and over and over. Until you see it yourself, it's going to sound like cope to you. But the best analogy that I can give is a thought experiment. I've tried different thought experiments, but this is the one that I've come up with that I think is the best. Imagine you switched bodies. Look, let's say that you're like a normal person, maybe like late 20s, early 30s, and you're maybe a little on the homely side, not really big, not really good at anything, and you just feel like pretty shitty about yourself. Okay. Well, let's say that I put you in the body, like we do a Freaky Friday, and put you in the body of a guy who's 5'1", weighs maybe 90 pounds, like just repulsively ugly, looks like one of those anti-Semitic caricatures, or pick another race if you want to do that, and maybe even like have a hunchback or something, just like a total freak of nature. Okay. And you're already sensitive about your looks in your own body. So then I switch you into this one, which is substantially worse. Okay. Now, let's say somebody goes and, you're out walking in your new freak body, and people are like pointing at you and going, oh my God, this guy, look at this ugly freak. And people are calling you ugly and stuff like that. It's not nice. But the thing is, if you actually think about it, put yourself in that situation, you're not really going to be hurt. You're going to think like, that's like, because you're just going to say like, well, okay, yeah, but this body isn't me. This one isn't me. You're like, but however, and then if you saw, yourself walking down the street from the other end, and people started pointing at them, and saying bad shit about his looks. Like, aha, look at that guy's so ugly. That guy's really ugly. Look at what a faggot. Stuff like that. That's like, you're not in that body anymore, but you're like, oh, dude, that fucking sucks. You know, you're gonna feel hurt, affronted, whatever, because you still see that as you. But it's not. It's not. It's literally not. You're not in that body anymore. So, you know, what I'm saying is, you know, this the ego has a tendency to appropriate things, you know, as this is not just mine, but it's me. And when you see that that's not true, then you kind of automatically just don't take it. You just can't help but not take it seriously, you know? Like, it doesn't mean you neglect the body or it doesn't matter. And you can, it's the same thing like your personality, your intelligence, shit like that, your status. Even like your knowledge base, literally none of that belongs to you, you know? And like I said, like, because I use the thought experiment. As of now, we don't have a way to Freaky Friday anything. But if we theoretically could, right? And then tell me which one is you. Because this is, I know, like, there's going to be some Black Pill Orthodox watching it. And look, you know what? They don't even have to be Black Pill. This is what I would have been thinking when I was a kid. Or not even a kid, just younger. They're going to be thinking, they're going to say, this is cope. Because I've had people explicitly say this to me. No, your body is you. It's like, okay. So if I switched your consciousness into a new body, which one is you? The new body or the old one? And I don't know what they would say. They might give me some bullshit like, oh no, the new body is now me. But you know they don't really believe that. They're going to see the old one as you. So I think that's, you know, that's the problem. And I'm not saying that doing this thought experiment is going to cure you from taking yourself too seriously or your low self-esteem. I'm only doing it to illustrate what I'm talking about. And, you know, it's, because it's true. I mean, that's what reality is. Like, on a practical level, you know, what you can do is, I mean, like I said, I definitely wouldn't recommend going through a deep depression. That's not a good way to do it. I would have said, you know, just getting old and, like, aging it out. You know, that probably helps with some, because generally you see this. The aging process causes people to generally get more comfortable in their own skin and stuff like that. But I mean, you're going to see guys like Rogan who go the other way around. But, you know, when you're young, obviously you don't look like, you're like, okay, I got to wait another 50 years to get over this. Well, you know, some things just take time. Like, if you want to learn a language, it takes time. And, you know, that's, you know, so that's part of it, but maybe it's not necessarily guaranteed. There's some people that are going to just take themselves seriously forever, and they just never get over it. Again, Joe Rogan, lots of other guys like it. Hell, look at Trump, you know, still got that huge ego. But it's not even just Trump. They're all those politicians. Now, they maybe take themselves seriously, like, in a different way than they did when they were younger, but they're all like that. And, but so, like, practically, though, what can you do? And I've talked about this before. One thing that really helps is get rid of all anger. You know, this is probably more for self-confidence than anything, but you'll notice I'm not saying that just because you have no anger, you're going to be confident, but I'm saying that having a lot of anger will make you less confident. And then as for how you get rid of anger, that's a little tougher. You know what? It's tough if you don't believe in God, right? Because if you believe in God, it's easier to say, well, everything that happens, good or bad, is God's will, and I've got no control over anything. I'm responsible for my actions, but I'm not responsible for the outcomes. And, you know, I can want something or not want something as much as I want, but I don't get a say in it, you know, however it wants. So, like, somebody like me, right, who's got, like, a lot of anger towards liberals, and be like, yeah, I want to see liberalism defeated and all the immigrants kicked out. But ultimately, it's not up to me. if like if it's, like, if God wills for, us to become some liberal dystopia, there's nothing I can do. There's no way to stop, God's plan or God's will. So if I'm going to be like, if you have to be angry at somebody, be angry at God. Not at like the people or the events. And that kind of like takes away, the so it is healthier. Like if you're going to be angry, don't project that anger onto the people who are ultimately just agents of the divine plan. I'm not trying to preach here, okay? I'm just explaining the way I look at it. And it is helpful if you believe in God. If you don't believe in God, obviously it's not going to work. There might be some way you could do it of just like you don't have to think of God as like a person, like an all-powerful person. It's better if you don't. So you don't have to even call it God if you don't want. Call it the universe, if that makes you feel better. It's the same idea. So that's the first thing you can do, to be angry. And then another thing is, to never act out of anger. The thing is, because you are going to get angry, but you don't have to act on it. And it doesn't, it's weird, right? But just not acting on it will help. Acting on it will make it worse, and not acting on it, it just like, I guess it just, when you act on it, you feed it. So that'll help. And I know remember, this is all for the purposes of improving your confidence. So this is something you're doing for you. It's going to make you more confident. Maybe it doesn't seem like it, but it will. So yeah, that's the first thing. And the next thing, I've talked about this before, is to never insult anybody. Now, there's people who, I'm not going to say any names, maybe say something where they need to be called out. You should do that, again, sparingly, judiciously. And also, do as I say, not as I do. But you just don't insult anybody. I don't know why it helps, but it does. If somebody, I don't know, something like, because there are going to be people who do things that anger or irritate or upset you, or you just don't like, and you don't. I mean, again, like, you don't have to like go too crazy with it. Like, again, critique is fine, and sometimes it's not just fine; it's necessary, even very harsh critique. But just like just telling somebody that they're a faggot or a retard, like, that's just, and I still do that sometimes. That's not critique. That's just frustration. Frustration coming out. And when you say those things, like I said before, you're cultivating those feelings of anger or frustration. And you will be more confident if you don't do things like that. I don't know why it is. I just know that it's true. And but yes, I mean, that really helps. And then another thing, and this may be even, I don't know if it's the most important, but this is really important, is you don't respond to criticism, and again, not a spurg about this. There are times, I remember the first person I ever heard say this was in high school when I read the letter from a Birmingham jail by Martin Luther King, where he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, he said that if I responded to every piece of criticism that came across my desk, I would never do anything else. So, and it's actually really the only thing I remember, because I read the whole letter. I had to read it for school, and that's really the only thing I remember from it. But I don't know why, like, even at the time, it really stuck with me. There are times where, you should or at least can respond to criticism. But generally speaking, there's no need, right? Just let, your actions and your words, they're all out there. Let them speak for themselves. If somebody says something about you that's not true, then, okay, there may be times where you need to correct the record. But generally speaking, I would err on the side of not responding. And, the thing is, we want to see like a guy who does this perfectly is Casey. And generally, I wouldn't follow Casey for anything, but the way he handles criticism is perfection. He just doesn't acknowledge it. And I know, he might not be aware of me, but he certainly wouldn't care. But there's much bigger people than me who've gone after Casey. And he's definitely at least aware of it. He probably doesn't give it much thought, but that's how you play it. Casey's stuff is all out there. Take it or leave it. He's not trying to convince you. He's not going to argue with anybody. If you don't like him, that's fine. You don't like him, you can say your piece on his comments. That's fine, but he's not going to deal with it. And again, the Casey's bad. Don't be like Casey. But in this way, when it comes to having to deal with criticism, that's how you do it. Whether you're wrong or right. The criticism, could be, again, the criticism could be true. You could be like, most of the criticism of Casey is completely true. Doesn't respond to it. But it's the same way, right? I think, sometimes there's a concern that, and this has been the case with me, that if you leave criticism unanswered, it's a concession that it's true. Like that the criticism is correct. No, it doesn't mean anything one way or the other. It just means you're not responding to it. And the thing is, so I guess your attitude just needs to be that you trust people to make up their own mind. You don't have all the answers. People are going to say stuff to you, and you just don't respond to it. So it doesn't even have to just be criticism. It can be like insults, like you're getting picked on and stuff. And developing, a thick skin and the ability to endure. There's a lot of situations when you're in school or something, when you're in middle school or younger or in high school, you're in kind of a trap situation where if somebody wants to bully you, there's really nothing you can do. They're more popular than you, and they're throwing stuff at you or just fucking with you, and you're in school, you can't go and fight. You can't go and hit them because then you're going to get suspended. So the bullies have this situation where they're basically just immune to consequences. And a lot of them, they're bullying because they know that you can't do shit about it. They know that you'd be you can challenge them to a fight. And that, I got rid of one high school guy who was, harassing me back in the day by that way. And you can fight him. But if you're not physically that big, you're gonna eventually run into somebody who's gonna fuck you up if you try to do it that way. So, instead, you just do nothing. You just take it, and again, our culture says, "Oh, that's being a bitch." No, it's choosing your battles. It's choosing your battles, and being able to endure is important. It's a strength, and because there are going to be times, I don't care who you are, where you are outmatched, and the only thing you're going to be able to do is endure. And I'm grateful actually for the times that I was bullied, because it got me. It was unpleasant at the time, but I see now that it caused me to develop. To develop the things and to kind of learn. I had to learn to not take myself too seriously. I was kind of forced into it, whereas if you're somebody look at somebody like The Rock, he's never had to learn to not take himself too seriously. So he ended up becoming a total douche, and so in a lot of ways, you're better off. And I'm not trying to cope here. If you're currently going through bullying, I'm sorry. I'm not saying it's good, but there can be benefits to some of these bad things. And it also reminds me of, I don't know if he's still around, but there was this guy, Jim Acosta, who was a CNN reporter who, he was always getting into it with the Trump administration, but he would go to the Trump rallies during Trump's first term. And I read this thing from this guy who was like a pro-Trump guy who was at a rally and said, like, I saw he was at this rally I was at, Acosta, and I came away with so much more respect for him because he's there reporting on it. And then once, when he stops reporting, the audience is just like taunting him, insulting him, throwing stuff at him. And he just stands there stoic the entire, like says nothing and just stands there and takes it. And, that caused me to develop like a lot of respect for the guy. Whereas if it had been somebody like Chris Cuomo or something, he would have like insulted the audience back and probably attacked some people. And, obviously Acosta's not a big guy like Chris Cuomo. So he's, he again, like in his life has had to learn to not behave that way. But people intuitively understand that that's the more dignified way to react. Not to like go crazy and chimp out. It's to be able to have self-control and, and to just take it. And sometimes that's the hand you're dealt. So yeah, if you are somebody who's freaking out and attacking people like Chris Cuomo or like Joe Rogan probably would, then yeah, I mean, you probably are taking yourself too seriously, So I guess that's not the world's like greatest advice, but that's all I've got for you right now. That's all for now. See you in the next.